Hello, and welcome back to the Seeker's Reset. My name is Robert, and I remain, as always, at my parents' house, where I am at 42 years old, undergoing the humbling of what I'm calling, and what my partner and I, previous partner and I, have called the Seeker's Reset. I don't know if she would agree with me on what exactly it is, but it is a term that we sort of came up with together. And today, the main topic of the conversation is personal responsibility. Um, a lot of people say many things about what personal responsibility is about, what responsibility is. You'll hear people talk about it just by breaking down the word responsibility, like our response to different things. And there's a lot of truth in that. And then you'll hear other people that go towards the more moral bent, talking about responsibility from the perspective of being able to do the right thing and take care of oneself, and uh, you know even just as simply as the very, very basics, as like having income, having a home, having food, taking care of the people in your life that matter to you, like family, if you have children, or taking care of your company if you have a company. Responsibility runs a very large spectrum, and people tend to look at it from different perspectives. And I happen to think that among everything I just said, um, all of it is relevant. All of it. All of it is relevant. You could add in other things like even responsibility to the community, to your country, civically. Um, there are many aspects of responsibility. What I want to focus on more than anything is that responsibility is at the core of the seeker's reset. So I often draw the analogy with hitting rock bottom as an addict. Most people, I believe everybody is an addict for one, but like when you think of a substance abuser, is usually how the average person will think of an addict. And the experience of hitting rock bottom is usually associated with that, or potentially with things like gambling as well. Um, but the vices associated with hitting rock bottom tend to be like pretty specific in the collective, like the general collective consciousness, the mainstream of the collective consciousness. Um, and just as with that, the moment of rock bottom, the time when the reset begins, you can hit rock bottom and not take personal responsibility. But if you're going to find yourself in a reset moment, you have to take personal responsibility. Now, the trick and the catch is that there are different, as I said, there are different aspects to personal responsibility. And a lot of the time, the way that a seeker or an addict or anybody else is encouraged to perceive personal responsibility is to just do the things that other people think are important. So, for instance, if I'm an addict, very often, if I hit rock bottom, all the people around me will want is for me to stop doing drugs and quote unquote get my life in order, which includes mostly have stable income, have a stable life, and stop hurting people because of your addiction. All of these things are valuable. However, what was the reason for the addiction? What was the reason? What was the reason that I became an alcoholic, or I became a heroin addict, or I became a gambler, or I became a sex addict, or I was reckless in any number of other ways? What was the reason that we as seekers began such a began a search that took over our lives. What was the reason? So a fundamental part of taking personal responsibility is not just to correct the physical things in our environment, although that is important. That's part of taking personal responsibility. But the main issue when it comes to our growth as souls, and when it comes to honoring the thing inside of us that drove us into whatever caused the rock bottom in the end, is that we have to become responsible for getting to the root of that. And this is where you could say in like psychological, like Jungian type terms, you could say, you start not looking outward, but inward in the most sincere way ever. So part of a seeker's reset and part of the taking of personal responsibility is to recognize that the source of the problem is within. Now, that's not going to be something you haven't heard elsewhere. But are we able to withstand the pressure of returning to a normal life? While we have to somehow learn how to get our lives back together materially, our relationships, our work, probably many other things. In my case, almost everything, our health. And as we begin to try to correct all of that, there is a very strong push to try to forget the real reasons that we went on the search in the first place. The real reasons for it. We get lost in the decisions of the last year, which, as a microcosm, you could say like every decision that you make can encode the real reasons for any trouble and problem in your life, the real motivations, the real driving forces. But the only way we're actually going to solve the problem and guarantee that we don't end up eventually in some similar situation in the future as we've now been in the past, or that we don't end up in a situation in which we are now simply just learning to suppress all the reasons that we went on the search or took on the addiction in the first place. Well, then you may get through this life intact, and you may even materially be in much better condition at the end of this life. But will we have actually improved at the soul level as we move on to whatever comes next? And a great deal of what poses as transformation at the point of rock bottom doesn't adequately address what I'm talking about. We might even have to ask the question, why did I choose this path? Just sincerely, why? I mean, I've been asking myself that question today because I've reached an intersection of some kind, and I can feel like a lot of the pain that I thought I had processed and a lot of the symptoms that I thought I was getting over, they're rising to the surface again. And I don't understand it right now. I just know that I'm resisting. I'm resisting something. I'm resisting what I actually need. I'm resisting what I actually desire. I'm resisting my emotions. I'm resisting making decisions. So I'm not yet taking personal responsibility. I'm in a state of resistance. You could say that responsibility and resistance, while maybe not completely opposite, because you could say responsibility and escape are probably the most opposite, responsibility and avoidance. Responsibility and resistance are still in conflict with each other. So when we resist, we are not taking responsibility. And I'm experiencing that in my process right now. But one of the points I'm trying to make is that responsibility is not just about, do I have a job? Are people threatened by me? Am I living healthily, physically healthily? Am I being nice to people or kind to people? Am I serving in some capacity? All of those things can be beautiful and much better than being on a violent path where you're disregarding others and yourself. But these are just the surface of it. And underneath that, the work has to be, why did I ever even go on the search? Why did I ever even adopt the addictions? That's the real point of personal responsibility on the soul level. It's getting to the why. Divine truth discusses that why in terms of what are called emotional injuries that we experience in childhood. In fact, that we experience as early as conception, as we are absorbing in the womb the emotions in our environment, especially from our mothers. And our responsibility as we grow older is to make sure that the injuries that occurred to us do not then become excuses or reasons to continue inflicting damage on others and ourselves, acting in unloving ways towards ourselves, towards others, towards the environment. The responsibility is to own that stuff. And so therefore, yes, doing things externally that at a minimum, you could say cause no harm. And that's where that expression of do no harm is quite useful. Like to get into a state of, I do not want to harm people. That's good. But you will not really be able to live that fully. So I can tell this about myself until the changes within occur. And what I mean by that is, for me, for the last 2 years, and especially for the last year, I have been trying with all of my willpower to be a better person in the world. But I can tell you that as long as I feel these emotions inside of me, I'm still not being a very good person. I may be a better person in some ways than I was before, but I've yet to fully experience the change which within myself, which allows me to actually live freely and well, freely and lovingly. I am resisting something. I'm not taking responsibility. Or you could say I'm not humble enough, as I begin to recognize that I don't know how to do this. I have tried so many things in my life, and I'm still on this wheel. And do I think I make progress? Yes. But I also think that something in life is drawing me into a corner constantly to change on a deeper level, and I am resisting it. And that's where I'm not taking responsibility for the questions of my soul, not just for the material circumstances around me. So, as part of the Seeker's Reset, it is necessary to take personal responsibility, and that there are different levels and different aspects to this. I hope that that has been clear. But the underlying one, which we would betray ourselves as seekers, especially if you've gotten to the point where I've gotten to in this process, which, by the way, it's not a special point. It's a point, it's just the point I'm at. You could say I'm at this point because I'm actually quite stubborn. But the point that I've gotten to is there is no forgetting. Like, I cannot go backward. I can't. At least I don't think so. I mean, I don't know for sure, I guess, but it feels like there's no going back. It feels like I just have to learn how to do it. And for the first time today, I recognized, wow, some people really aren't on this path, just aren't on it. That maybe we're all meant to be on it in the end. Maybe everybody in the end has to be on it. But there are people right now who are not at all paying attention to this. Not at all. Like zero. They may have spiritual practices. They may be philosophically inclined. They might be religious. They could have connections to what we can call spirituality. Some of them might even be very, like, almost flamboyantly spiritual. But they're not actually on this path of being changed. They're not on the path of actually going through the process of change. And if you're watching my videos, you're probably on that path. And if you're watching my videos, you're probably not the best at it either. And it may be wreaking havoc on you. And it might have been doing it for years. I've been listening to somebody talking about a dark night of the soul and talking about, like, this can last 2 to 3 months. I've been 2 to 3 months. I've been in a dark night of the soul for most of my life. Most of my life, I have been in a dark night of the soul. So something inside me desperately wants to wake up, but something else inside me is at war with that. And the personal responsibility is that eventually I have to own that situation, and we all will. Eventually, a deeper choice has to be made to surrender to it, to be humble, to allow the change to occur, even if we have no effing clue what exactly the change is. Because I can talk to you about the ideas of what that change is, but at the end of the day, it's mostly here. So I am definitely working right now on trying to ignore this as much as possible, open this up as much as I can, because I am dead in my heart, just dead. But follow it whenever it's there. Do things to take care of my material environment as lightly as possible, because the last thing that I want is to be overcommitted to things materially, when I know that I don't even know what the hell is going on inside of me and who I'll be in a week, a month, a year. But for me as a seeker, resetting, I've had to settle into being here, feeling these pains, even though it's not even close to the emotion. I feel like I'm still not even touching emotion half the time. I'm just feeling the withdrawal symptoms. There are serious withdrawal symptoms during the Seeker's Reset, as I am describing it. Serious withdrawal symptoms. Others might call them ascension symptoms. I don't know if that's in the same category. I mean, it's the same types of symptoms, but I don't know if what people think of as so-called ascension symptoms or ascension is what I'm going through. I went through periods of my life where I thought I was going through ascension. I went through periods in my life where I thought I was in a dark night of the soul. I believe that those two experiences helped prepare me for now, but I'm not sure that the reset that I'm going through right now is actually the same as what those were. So the personal responsibility is to learn how to go through that in a way that actually makes the life around you better as much as possible, but not at the expense of completing the inner process that you did start during your search. You did start this process during your search. I started this process during my search, but the search was not focused on it. I was not totally sincere. I'm still not totally sincere.